Don't you cry.
Kumbaya, my
Oh,
lord.
sleep, you little
Kumbaya.
baby. When you
Kumbaya, my lord.
shall have all
Kumbaya.
the pretty little horses
Kumbaya, my lord.
wax and bake
Kumbaya,
and
oh Lord, kumbaya.
I forgot the lyrics on it.
Someone's praying. You giving up already?
I'm giving up. This is harder than doing a round because at least with a round I know what you're doing.
But that's the whole point of like doing it like this, is because it's silly. We now have 3 people here watching us. This is incredible.
Oh my gosh. Packed house. Packed house.
Yes, it is. Oh, one of them's dropped off already. Great.
You're like, oh no, I didn't come here for this.
What? Oh, it's this one. No, I didn't want to watch this. This is awful. I watched this guy before. So welcome everybody. It's Friday with Friends. Today is Friday. And it is the 4th of September. Where the heck did August go? It must have been the singing. Thanks, Jane. Maybe it was.
Hey, Liz.
We were trying to do a round, but we decided that would be too obvious and too awkward. And so we decided to sing 2 completely different songs at the same time, which was kind of fun and dopey because it's my show.
It's his show, so you gotta do what he'd like to do.
Where did August go? Where did July go? Where has everything gone? This is just nutso times. What are you doing in these COVID coronavirus times, my dear?
I am.
Oh, hang on, sorry.
You know what?
Our guest today on today's show is Rachel Ann Harding. But what are we going to do today, Rachel? We are going to dedicate this show to Janice Del Negro.
Janice Del Negro.
Because Anne knows everything about Janice, and Janice is an amazing storyteller. We're not going to talk about Rachel Ann at all.
Just about Janice.
Just about Janice. She might not be here right now. Anyway.
It's good. She'll miss this bit, so she'll continue talking to me in the future.
So we're not going to do that. We're just being silly. Anyway, so Rachel Ann, tell me all about what you're doing during COVID-19.
I am like enjoying home. I admit for the first time this week I've started to miss traveling because I traveled once in February.
Getting a bit twitchy.
Yeah. I gotta go see Jane and go ride the longest escalator in the world. And then I was home and I was like, oh, this is great. This is lovely. My day job would like transferred all of us working from home. So I've been sitting in my living room working my day job every day. And it's great. It's really nice. We planted a garden. I am very proud of my chard and somewhat disappointed in my tomatoes. So it's a give and take.
Yeah. Liz, how are your tomatoes? She's jealous that we're doing the show about Janice. So maybe let's do the show about Liz instead.
Oh, we can talk about Liz.
So Liz Weir is this powerhouse of a storyteller. She might be small in stature, but she is a giant when it comes to storytelling. She doesn't like people talking about her brogue, but my gosh, her voice, that Irish brogue is absolutely gorgeous.
She also makes a heck of a soup.
She does? Well, yeah. Of course she does. All really British people make good soups. I think the Irish people probably make better soups than the English. No green fingers, she says. There you go.
So I've only started growing my green fingers. I would say mine are like, they're just sprouted, like little green fingers.
Little green. So not quite chartreuse.
Little baby fingers.
Yeah, we used to have, at our old place up in Orford, we used to have a massive vegetable garden. And the soil was really good. So we grew like everything there. And then we moved here where we have no longer 4 acres, which is what we used to have, but a third, I think it is. And the soil here is a bit rubbish. So we tried for about 3 years to grow stuff and it was nothing. So we just kind of gave up. Life got busy too.
Oh, Liz, it's your carrot ginger that I'm very fond of.
Oh, really?
Yeah.
So I make a good potato and leek soup, and that has onions and spring onions in there, or carrot ginger. That does sound good.
That's where I learned a couple. Okay, so a couple tricks. When I started storytelling, we'll get into that little bit of story, so we can get to the soup. When I started storytelling, Liz invited me out to the barn, the Valley Inn barn, where I went out for a month and followed her around, watching her do storytelling. But I also learned a couple important things about making soup. It's really helpful to have an electric tea kettle. I never had one before I went to Ireland, and I have never been without one since I got back, because you can start sweating the vegetables and then boiling the tea kettle, and then you pour the hot water over the vegetables and let them boil. And the other bit that I loved was the immersion blender. It just, I mean, everybody may be going like, duh, these are things you do to make soup. I didn't know this.
Yeah, but you're also a youngster, so you're a slip of a girl compared to some of us.
So then you go with the immersion blender, and it's like all lovely and orange and delicious.
Yeah. Yeah, one of the first things that I had to get was, we had one of those like on the stove kettles for a long time, and I was like, this is stupid. I can't stand this thing. It just gets in the way. Let's get an electric kettle. And they were hard to find when I first came over here 25 years ago. They just weren't around.
In the States?
Yeah.
Or just like there were a bunch over in
No, I just couldn't find them in the States 25 years ago. I mean, you could, but they were hard to find.
I mean, you didn't use Amazon?
I think Amazon wasn't around back then, actually. No, I don't use Amazon anymore. I have stopped using Amazon years ago. So they're evil company. When he's making that much money and he's treating his workers the way he treats his workers, I'm not going to support him.
And now we come to the political aspect of this.
No politics, no religion, none of that stuff. Maybe Liz needs to come to Woodruff. Yes. I don't think you could afford it, Tom. I'm not being funny, but it would be good. It would be good. She'd be a very good draw for the festival. Yeah, Liz is an amazing storyteller. And if you haven't heard her, you should definitely look up some of her worksheet. There is some stuff up on YouTube. And actually, have you got any of your stories, Anne, on your web?
So
my words aren't coming out very well.
I think there's maybe one or two, but the one that I think is live is actually the one from Phoenix 2014.
Wow.
Yeah. The Snow White Rose Red.
That's a good one too.
I know it stood the test of time. It's still a really good story, but Facebook or YouTube is tricky. I still, there's part of me that wants to figure that out in a way that really engages the listener. It's great to have videos up there, especially when you're wanting to do auditions and people are saying we need to see your work. But it's also when you don't know who the person is and when you don't know the storyteller, it's not the engaging the way a live in-person piece is.
No, it never will be. Unless, there's two ways of doing it, right? You can either do it as if you're telling a story to a live audience and pretend that it's, it is a live audience. It's like, so come into my parlor, said the spider to the fly, blah, 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 right? Or you can like add all the effects and have multiple yous pop up on the screen and that somebody posted a video of these three women from England, I think it was, who were telling Anansi stories and other West African stories. And it looked more like a TV show than a storytelling. And it was there was a lot of editing going on. And to me, that's not, it is a form of storytelling. It's just not what I do right now and probably won't ever do, because unless I've got a production company
right,
that's going to fund that, it's not going to happen,
I've had a lot of ideas about, for me, any kind of online promotion is just trying to get people attached enough to you and storytelling to come see you in person.
Right.
And for them to be invested in live storytelling.
Right.
And so YouTube, I think there would be a way to do it kind of mimicking what people are already used to and engaged in. So a blog or the vlog style, working with different depths of field, get people engaged into who you are as a person. And then say, I'm going to tell you a story, and setting it in a way that's short and pithy and quick, which is not necessarily what we all enjoy doing as storytellers.
Right.
but it would say, I think it would be a way for people to be engaged and say, this is something I'd like to see more of. And then maybe get them to an online show or an in-person show once we can be in person.
Yeah. Hi, Rosie. It's nice to meet you. She's all the way from Kansas. This is amazing.
Yes.
Oh, she's a barn person.
Yes, barn people. Barn people unite.
Maybe Liz sent a hurrah out to all of her folks. Thank you, Liz. If you did, that's really nice of you. I appreciate that. And so does Rachel Ann.
I do.
So, Rachel Ann, you do you have a podcast.
I do.
You have a podcast, and you enslaved you use the talents of myself and also Isabel on a bicycle, Hauser. Hey, Jeff, how's it going? So tell us about your podcast. For those people that don't know about Story Podcast, which it can't be that many people that don't know about it now.
Well, I mean, in the storytelling community, it tends to get around because I'm constantly hounding people to send me more stories. Wink, wink, nod. People out there need to send me more stories. So this podcast was like
it's traditional stories.
It's all traditional folk and fairy tale.
So unless Jeff creates a story that's a folk and fairy tale, he's not going to be on your podcast, is he?
No, but I think I've heard Jeff do a Robin Hood piece, which would
really
be applicable.
Do you think Jeff would look good in tights?
Haven't I seen him in tights?
I don't. We might have done. I haven't. Not yet, anyway.
So it's all folk and fairy tale, and I started it because I couldn't find a podcast that had folk and fairy tale of people that I was totally awestruck by, and I wanted to hear more work. And I figured I wasn't the only person out there that would fall in love with work like this. And I reached out, and it was very much that I felt like I felt so nervous reaching out to people and saying, would you mind if you would send me some of your work and I could put it on this podcast and promote it to people? And there's been so much generosity because I know what it takes to put together these stories. And so whenever I get a story or a CD, I'm just so grateful and so excited for listeners to hear it because people have really picked up on it. It's got about 4,000 listeners.
That's pretty cool.
That are consistent.
That's amazing. That's really good.
It's pretty great.
Yeah. And Isabel Hauser is one of the guest hosts, part-time hosts. And I'm one of the other ones. And it's a really good podcast. I mean, I'm not saying that because I do it. I do it because it's a really good podcast. And actually I've recorded the episode that's coming out on is it the 9th next week? It's actually going to have you on it.
It is.
I'm hosting it, and you're putting a story out. What's your story about? Don't tell the story because then people won't listen.
I don't remember which one I said was going to be on the episode.
I don't remember either.
Because there was one that I was trying. It was carrying the father-in-law, but then there was some issues in the recording. So I haven't recorded any CDs, despite telling everybody that they should record CDs for me and the podcast. But these are all live recordings. And so trying to go through some of my live recordings, and I'll find one and I'm like, this would work. I can put that out. Because for 4 years and almost 200, I think there's like 250 episodes.
Yeah, that's a lot.
On maybe 2 or 3 of them.
I know, which is ridiculous.
But I haven't put a lot of my own storytelling on there.
So this is also, when it says Tom Davis, it could also be Karen Page
Hi, Tom or
Davis.
Karen.
They're usually together. They're usually sitting down together. Rachel Hedman says, wait, what? What? That Rachel Ann hasn't got a CD out and hasn't got a whole bunch of stuff. She's working on it. She's got the CD cover, which is done by the artist who did my CD covers, except the style looks completely different. But I've seen the cover. It's awesome.
It's a
and Anne is working on her CD. How long has it been going on for? Because you actually got your CD cover sorted out before mine.
I
In
did.
fact, you had everything sorted out before I started working on mine. We kind of.
The CD cover was done last year.
Mm-hmm.
And then we got to COVID, and instead of taking advantage of the isolation and saying, you know what, I'm just going to work on the CD, I was like, I'm going to start another project.
And so that's the CD you've got Story Podcast, and there's something that you and I both hold pretty close to our hearts.
Storyteller?
Steampunk.
I was like, I wasn't sure if you. So
Steampunk.
I've had this idea for like 6 years. I don't know if any of you are Jane Eyre fans, and so you might either love this idea if you're a Jane Eyre fan, or just think it's the worst idea ever. But I listened to Jane Eyre when I was working as a house cleaner, and I was listening to the audiobook, and I'm like, this is so much fun. This would be really interesting as a steampunk book. What if Jane lived in a steampunk world? And for those of you who don't know what steampunk is, it's kind of like the Victorian era maintained its course with like corsets and bustles and steamy gear, engineering. And then it just continued on. So in this particular version, Jane is, this young woman living in a steampunk world, and the mansions are floating and can fly through the air. And she has a clockwork eye from the crash that her parents died in when she was young. So it's maintaining the core of the book, but it's adding these steampunk bits around it. And I love the book, and I deeply love these characters. So getting to play in that world, for me, it's it's kind of in the same vein of reasons why I did the Story podcast. It was a lot because I wanted an education in storytelling. And not only could I put out a service to listeners and a service to storytellers, hopefully supporting their work and getting people to know their work who may not have encountered it. So it was an education for me, and it was a service that I could provide. And with the steampunk book, it's me getting to actually work line by line with these authors that have survived hundreds of years. Charlotte Bronte, or Bronte, however you pronounce it, is an author whose works have survived for hundreds of years, and getting to go line by line with her through her book and see how she put it together is such an education. And so doing this to a few books, I'm hoping will educate my writer's mind so that eventually I can put out my own books. But this is a way for me to do it and still be able to contribute to the genre.
This will be your book because you're writing it. I mean, you're taking Jane Eyre's work, but you're reimagining it. So it is your work.
It is, but it's kind of like somebody handed me something already beautiful and created and said, do something, make an art piece out of the Mona Lisa. And I'm like, oh, that's really
it's already an art piece. It would be it's kind of like what Andy Warhol did, right? Make pop art.
Yeah.
Out of Mona Lisa.
Which
right?
Some people love, and some people are just like, so
yeah.
Either way you feel about it, I totally understand. But I'm going to be starting to release that chapter by chapter via blog in October 16th. It'll be the same release date as Jane Eyre came out as a book.
No way.
I will start releasing it chapter by chapter by blog. And then hopefully in January, there will be a podcast that people can listen to, hearing it narrated.
Right. And Dandia, what's
Danita Feldman?
Danita, sorry. What was the last name? Feldman. Yeah. She's doing the
narration.
Yeah. Rachel Ann asked me to do it, and I said, well, isn't it in a female voice? She's like, yeah. I was like, maybe you should get somebody else to do it. So we got somebody else to do that. And she's a Brit as well, which is excellent.
Yeah.
Because when I suggested someone else, I was thinking it's going to be an American, and it's Jane Eyre, and it's steampunk is Victorian England. It's are you going to write in Spring-Heeled Jack into it?
I don't know who that is.
I'll let you have a conversation with Rachel Hedman. I'm sure she knows who Spring-Heeled Jack is. And Jane, yes, I totally agree. It's so neat that you're going to use the same date. That's pretty darn special.
Well, and then the hope is I'm looking for an illustrator to do chapter heading illustrations. But the hope is that once we get to next year and the podcast is released and moving along, all of the chapters will be released online. But then I can sell it as a book, and I'm prepping it so that it will drop on Charlotte Bronte's birthday. So I'm looking for these particular dates just to be like, it's coming out on her birthday.
That's so cool. I love that. That is so cool. Hey, do you want to tell us a story?
Sure.
Does everybody else want to hear Rachel Ann tell a story? We have to wait like 2 minutes for them to respond. So we're not going to wait. We're just going to say, we're going to pretend they're all going to say, of course, that Rachel Hedman. But Rachel Hedman is saying, of course, to Spring Heel Jack, I think. But we'll pretend it's all about you, because it is today.
It's all about me.
Yeah. All right. You got your sippy.
All right.
So are you going to play a musical instrument while you're telling this story?
I'm not going to play a musical instrument, though I would love to tell you. I mean, most of you know a ukulele and a guitar, but this is a banjolele, which was my my way of getting around having to learn a whole new instrument, because I know how to play the ukulele, and so I got this is it's a banjolele head and ukulele strings, so it has banjolele sound. And we'll tell you about the concert that I'll be in after I tell you this story.
Hang on. Rachel Hedman, I know someone who has steampunk art.
Ooh, one of our photographers with the Story Crossroads specializes in. I'd be interested to connect with them. I'm looking for somebody who can do these art illustrations at the chapter headers. So send me suggestions, because that's the next hurdle. Okay. So
And you thought it was gonna be a waste of time coming on my show.
Not. I thought it was gonna be a ride. Like waste of time, never.
Oh no, Rosie agrees with me.
Oh, he does not, Rosie. Don't let him bully you into this. Okay. So this tale, it's lovely that Liz is here, because it is a tale from Ireland, and no, I won't be using an accent because I've been trained very well. This tale comes from Glendalough. You see, a long but not so long time ago, there was a king who ruled over Glendalough. He loved hunting. King O'Toole loved hunting almost more than anything else in the world. When he was a young man, he would chase game on foot. When he grew older, he would chase after it day after day on the back of a horse. But age hunts us all. And it came that after many years, he was old and lame, and he could hardly walk. His feet hurt so bad, his bones were so stiff, and he was quite depressed. He wasn't sure if he wanted to go on being unable to hunt. And one day, as he walked from his castle down around a lake, he was thinking about throwing himself in, if fate hadn't stepped in. You see, from out of the reeds tumbled this little gosling in those gray, fluffy, downy feathers, who looked up at him and began to follow him around like a greyhound. And by the time that goose had grown sleek feathers and a red beak, why, she was the king's love and delight. She would walk with the king around the lake, and he would laugh at her antics as she flew through the air. She was a good Catholic goose. She only ate fish on Friday, and she would fish in the lake for her supper. But age hunts us all. And after 10 years of the sweet goose and the king enjoying their lives and frolicking, well, she frolicking around the lake, the king watching her, the goose herself grew lame. She could barely waddle on her little flat feet, and her wings were so stiff she could no longer take flight. And the king fell into a deeper depression. He once again was walking alone around the lake one morning, thinking about throwing himself in, when he looked up, and there in front of him was a man. And the king immediately said, "God bless you, sir. Where are you from?" And the man touched his hat and he said, "Good morrow, King O'Toole. How is your goose?" The king immediately had tears in his eyes. She can hardly walk. She's so lame. But then looked at the man again. Who are you, sir? The man nodded. I'm a fixer of broken things. Tell me, what would you give me if I could heal your goose? The king's eyes almost popped out of his head. He turned and he whistled up to the castle, and out came the goose. Oh, her arms, her wings were stiff, her poor little feet flapping along the ground, but she came to her master with a happy honk, and he looked at his lovely goose, and he looked at the man. He said, I would give you anything you asked if you could heal her. And the man looked at King O'Toole. Anything? Would you give me the first land she flies over if I can heal her? The king said, I will give you anything. With that, the man picked up the goose. He made the sign of the cross over her, and he threw her into the air. Now she went up, and then she began to plummet like a rock, but then her wings snapped out, and she beat them once, twice, 3 times, and began to soar. Oh, she began to cut antics in the air as if she were just a young goose again. She flew out over a green field, doing flips and turns in the airs, honking with joy as the king, tears rolled down his face, and he laughed and shouted in joy along with her. And then she came to land, and she waddled over to the king, her little tail waggling, and the king, oh, he patted her on the head. Oh, you are the fairest jewel in the land. And then the young man spoke again. King O'Toole, she flew over that land. Will you give me that land? And the king said, yes. Though that is the last acre I have to give, I will give you that land. And the man smiled. Because you have been an honorable man, King O'Toole, I will tell you who I am. With that, the king looked him up and down. I've never asked, who are you? I thought you were just some sort of healer. No, said the man, I am Saint Kevin, the saint of Glendalough and Dublin, and I will be the first abbot of the abbey that I will build on that land you just gave me. And with that, the king crossed himself and slowly got to his knees, and the goose herself put her head to the ground in reverence for the saint. And the king said, I had no idea that I was talking to a saint. I thought I was just a man. And the saint said, yes, now you know what it is like to talk to a saint, for I am the greatest saint of all. Now that is really how it goes in the story, and maybe Saint Kevin wasn't known for his humility, but Saint Kevin did build that abbey in Glendalough and was the first abbot there. King O'Toole and his goose had many more years of joy, the goose flying round the lake, but one day the goose hunted her last fish and died. Now the king was heartbroken, but he knew he couldn't eat his friend, and it had been made blessed by a saint, so he had it stuffed. And that stuffed goose stayed with him for the rest of his life until he went to hunt in the lands beyond. And when the king passed on, the goose was given to Saint Kevin at the abbey, and to this day, that goose can be found in Glendalough. I just love a goose and a king friendship story.
Yeah, I've never heard that story, and it's a bit different, I have to say. It's very different.
Well, it's one of those that I was doing a story, a show about birds, and I was trying to find some bird stories to do, and it turns out that the story of King O'Toole and his goose was just too adorable to not tell.
Well, I would say that's true. It is an adorable story. Hang on, what does Liz say? You see, no phony accent needed. Great job. Yes. So should we talk about accents?
Yeah. I mean, we're both talking in accents.
We are. We both have our own accents. Mine's, yes, Rachel Hedman also agrees that a good goose-king relationship is good.
Goose-king relationship. You know, you don't get enough of those stories.
You don't. Wonder why. Maybe we should write a few. We could have a series. Rachel was like saying we should have a steampunk story festival, which I think would be awesome, actually.
It would.
But maybe they should all be Once Upon a Time There Was a King and a Goose.
There's a king and a goose.
Or a
That could be
gander.
a whole adventure. What's good for the goose, you know?
Right, exactly. So Liz did comment about the accent, and you also commented about the accent, and I think we should address this situation right now.
I know many people, feel that there are accents that would make a story better. Um, Sometimes it really doesn't. Sometimes it's a bit distracting.
Yes, I totally agree. I totally agree. Well, the thing with me is that what I find is that, and I can only speak pretty much to American storytellers because that's the majority of what I've heard throughout my life. I've only heard a couple of British storytellers in Britain, which is a shame. But what I found in the US, at least, is that some of the storytellers do like to tell Irish and Scottish stories in an Irish, or what they think is an Irish or a Scottish accent. But you never hear them tell. When I was interviewing Liz the other day, which will be coming out fairly soon, you never hear an American story say, "Then Hansel and Gretel, they left the cottage and they made their way through the forest." You never hear them do that, do you? Right?
No, forgive me, anybody from Germany out there.
I know. I'm just using that as a really good example, but like that's how it feels to yes. Liz says, runs screaming from the room, right? Yes, but that's exactly what it's like, though. So if you get these people, I mean, I do use Irish accents, but not when I'm telling the story. It's only when the characters speak. So there's a story that Liz and I share that we both tell, which is The One Wish. And David, he has an Irish accent, and he goes out cutting down the wood and everything to gather the wood out in the forest. And I don't tell the story like that, but that's his voice, right? And his father has a Northern Irish voice. So, which I can't do right now because I'm not telling the story. But yeah, it's and when I've done when I do my Irish accent or my Welsh accent or my Scottish accent, then I've gone to people who are Irish and have Irish accents themselves, not Americanized, but like firstborn Irish people. Mm-hmm. And Scottish Welsh, like my sister, right? My sister, when I was working on my Welsh accent, I'd phone her up and I'd be like, blah, 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 blah. And she says, "You sound like a Jamaican crossed with somebody from France."
Good to have somebody who's honest with you about
right. That. Yeah. Well, my sister is so honest about me. She doesn't let any of it slide at all. And so I'd phone her up and I'd be like, blah, 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 blah. And she'd be like, "No, that's not it." What? So Liz asks why, because I want to give the story its heritage is why. And I also think, and I've been told that my Irish accent isn't so bad. I think that was a really, I was actually doing a really poor Irish accent then. And sometimes if it's not coming out right, then I don't, because I want to respect where the story comes from and the people that's natively speaking in that language. And there's a little bit of Irish in my family, so there's,
Well, and it's one of the pieces that for me, I in some stories, for instance, if I'm telling a story from the South of America, mm-hmm. not South America, but Southern United States,
Southern states,
I will, there's parts of America has different accents from different parts of the country, and that's something that I'm not sure everybody realizes about the countries that they might try to mimic accents from. Mm-hmm. I didn't know that there were multiple accents of Irish until I went to Ireland and somebody said, "Oh, here's one from Dublin and here's one from Belfast," and I could hear the difference, but there's no way I could have repeated that. And so it's a level of respect to not try to mimic or not try to tell the story in an accent if that's not something that is needed. It's not something needed in the story.
Yeah. Liz did make a very good point.
It's
storytelling and not acting. Yeah. Ah, Liz, you're making me think about what I do now.
She'll do that.
I know. Yeah, it's true. Yeah. Marshall. Yes, I've heard. So I heard this white person telling a Nancy story in probably the worst Jamaican accent I have ever heard, and there were some African American people in the audience, and I was just, there was part of me. I was sitting at the back of the room, and I think if I had been sitting at the front, I would have been going like this: stop, stop, stop. But yeah, it was embarrassing. It's it's just well, when it's racist, right? I mean, if an American storyteller tried to started doing a Japanese accent, or a Chinese accent, and it didn't come out right, right?
And I think Via, that's your name. Via has a point. Via. That there's a couple different ways that you can work with character voices that don't necessarily involve accent. I've seen Milbury Birch do Billy Begg and his bull, and she had the rhythmic piece of the accents. She had there, because there's a rhythm that people will speak in, and there's more formal and there's more casual, and in listening to an accent and finding the rhythm of that can give you the different tone of characters without actually moving into a fake accent.
Yeah.
There's a lot of things that you can do with your voice that can indicate accent. You're very good at this, Simon. Your voice is ranged.
Well, I use a lot of British regional accents as well, or English regional accents. Right. So there's people from the Black Country in my stories because that's where I grew up. And my mother was from Birmingham, so I grew up hearing those voices. So I do those. And then my sister, she's moved up north, so I sometimes slip into I think it's a Yorkshire accent, which is kind of ironic because my dad was from Lancashire.
Yeah, it's a great conversation to have, especially as you move through stories, is how do you respect where this came from and all tell it so that it communicates the story to the audience you're telling it to.
Yeah. See, there's a lot of people that are smarter than me. I like to say that I am a bear with very little brain. But so Via agrees, referring more to when Simon. Oh, hang on, where did it go? So when Simon says something.
I mean, we all have stories where we've heard some truly cringy accents where it's just no.
Yeah, right.
And the thing about that is it's not respectful to the story. It's not respectful to the community, and it's not respectful to your listeners. They're pulled out of it because they're so worried about you embarrassing yourself that.
Oh, well, unless you're doing it right.
Right. If you're doing it just because you think it should be a part of the story, to tell it entirely in an accent that is not your own. Like I wouldn't tell a Mexican story, from Mexico in a Mexican accent. That would.
What is a Mexican accent? I'm sure it's the same with people from Mexico. It's like, right.
It's like hearing British folk do an American accent, and it becomes very weirdly Texas.
Yeah, well, that's because it's it's easiest to do. I think it's like the Southern accent is. I think if I was to live in somewhere like Atlanta, I would probably pick up a Southern accent very quickly, which kind of scares me. Which is a good reason to not go and live there. I think that and the humidity.
But
I don't know.
Gardens.
I know. Well, yeah, there is that.
I know. Oh, Liz,
it's true. It's not. So I don't do it with just the Irish. I also I do it with the Scottish, and I've checked with Scottish people with the accent to make sure that I'm doing it right. And with the Welsh tales, it's the same kind of thing. But anyway. And I think I think some of it is what you're able to do. If you can do it and do it well, then do it. But if you can't do it, then stay well away from it. And I don't know why Irish is fair game and Scottish is fair game. I won't post your comment because there's a misspelling on it. Southern accent isn't easy.
I know there's a lot of different dialects.
There's huge differences. Yeah.
And that's where I think people can slip into, just doing a Southern accent.
Mm-hmm.
It's like imagining all of California talks like a Valley girl.
Don't they?
It's really hard for me to not like just drop into a Valley girl accent. It's really the funnest. I loved it.
Yeah, I've seen Odds Bodkin do that, and he does a pretty good job of Valley Girl in one of his stories. It's like this girl who's just, oh my gosh,
I know, like. But it's good to have these conversations and to have them among the community and to encourage people to push for their strengths. Like mine is I don't know, I'm like I have a Colorado accent. Don't know what that means, but I have a Colorado accent.
Is it really? Is that what a Colorado? Someone from Colorado, or is it just the generic? There's a generic English accent, which is pretty much I can't say how I speak because if someone from England would say you sound like an American to me. So I have a generic transatlantic accent, I suppose. But you can hear bits of the West Midlands and the Black Country in some of the words I pronounce. Mm. When I listen back, I'm like, oh, there's a bit of Brummie there. Slipped to Worcester, where I come from. Sorry,
I couldn't hear it. I would just be like, oh, that's an English accent. I mean, that's Simon's English accent.
Right. Yeah.
Which may be a little bit different than Ada's English accent, but it's still I couldn't reproduce it, and I'm not going to try.
Okay, so all right. So what else can we talk about? So what are you doing for fun? I did see you. I saw you and Cooper at the Boulder Fringe Festival, and it was really that was the first night that I saw it on, and if it only got better from then, the last night must have been killer because the first night was brilliant, absolutely brilliant.
It was a lot of fun. So what's been interesting about quarantine and staying in isolation, and I know I'm so lucky to be able to just be in my house and work from home, and for Cooper really started to say, let's do some online shows. And we planned a couple every month. So May, June, and July, we did 2 shows a month. On the theme. And honestly, it feels like the first time in a couple years that I've really done a lot of concentrated storytelling and been able to focus on crafting a story, because we kept them down to an hour. Any more than that online, and there's just kind of a digital weariness. We all, I think, have a little bit of digital weariness and fatigue when it comes to the way things have been working over the last year. And so we've been focusing on doing hour-long shows and preparing stories. That's where King O'Toole and His Goose came from. And then we did the Fringe, which was 6 shows, the same stories for 6 shows. And it was amazing. It was a lot of fun to just tell the same stories over and over and over again. And it's different. It's certainly not the same as being in front of a live crowd. Mm-hmm. I've noticed that my performance has been honed differently. There's that energy that comes off of a live crowd. And I don't know about you, but when I get in front of a big group of people, I get really excited and really amped. And there's part of me that doesn't know how the story is being told. It's just kind of most of my brain is managing the adrenaline. And then the rest of me is telling the story. And so I can make some performance choices in the middle of it. But when I'm here in my living room and I have the computer and the mic in front of me.
That's not your music studio that you had built, custom built?
I wish. When I'm in my living room, getting to work with the camera and not having the feedback from the audience means I lean a little bit deeper into the story that I'm telling. And so it's given me a better chance to play with pauses and language and just trusting that the story as it's crafted is going to land somewhere. And I definitely look forward to the days that we're going to be out of this and back telling on stage.
Yeah, I've done I
Yeah.
think 7 or 8 in-person gigs, and they're still, even though they're in person, they're still weird. There's everyone's, the first row is 25 feet away. Right. This is one of the things that I've been stipulating. And I was on a stage and we did the same thing. I was at the back of the stage. They blocked off the front row of seats, and it was the second row. So I was like 25 feet away, which is what I requested. And it was so weird. Some of the people still wore masks because it was indoors.
Mm-hmm.
One of the outdoor gigs that I did, again, that was some people remained with their masks on.
Mm-hmm.
And you can't see people's faces, and you can see, shoulders going up and down, and you're hoping that they're laughing, but you
Yeah.
don't know, right? It might be like they're choking on their chicken sandwich that they shoved under their mask a minute ago, right? But yeah, so when you were telling these stories, when you did 6 nights of the same stories,
Mm-hmm.
you did 6 performances, so it was only 1 a night, right?
Yeah. I mean, it
Okay.
wasn't 6 days in a row. We had it spread over 2 weeks, but it was one show per day.
Okay. And how much did the stories change for you?
Some of them changed a lot. Some of them really needed to shift around in their seats.
Mm-hmm.
And then some of them just got easier to walk through. So then I could focus on other parts of the story, and really unpacking those. And so in one of them that I tell, I do play the banjolele and sing. And playing and singing and then telling a story while continuing to play is like a whole new level of multitasking. So I had this initial idea that it was going to be this really gorgeous, like super rhythmic, complicated pattern. And I was like, I'll just practice it every day for a number of weeks. And and I got a week out from the event and I was like, yeah, this isn't going to work. So
Really?
I went down to really simple plucking and was just like, I'm going to focus on the vocals of the song and then telling the story. So it was by the 6th night, it was a lot easier to play and sing and tell the story, because I had started to really decide how that went, and feel more comfortable in that space. But it was also interesting to get to hear Cooper tell the same story 6 times in a row, because his changed and he started recrafting them. And I'd be like, this is a different story than it was last week. They were all
That's so
really fun
cool.
versions, but he
Right.
was like crafting as they went. And it's something as a new storyteller that's hard to do, is to find an opportunity to tell a story twice, 2 events in a row, much less 6 times.
Yeah.
And that's a lot of fun. It changes how the story feels and how the story lands.
Yeah.
And it's a valuable experience, which is why, even though we didn't have as many people as might have come to a live show, we did end up having a really good run of getting to play with these stories.
That's good. That's excellent. And so are any of those stories on the CD that you're working on?
At this point, no, but it's been so long since I've tried to decide what stories are going to be on the CD.
So you're going to phone up Rob and say, we need to change the titles of the stories now.
Yeah, we might need to. But I am going to be telling one of the stories from the Fringe Festival at the show that's coming up next week.
Tell us about that show.
So Adam Booth very kindly invited me to be a part of the Speak Story series, and it was going to be in person, and it ended up, of course, needing to all go online. So this is going to be at 5 p.m. Mountain Time, 6 p.m. Central Time, 7 p.m. Eastern Time. I don't know what that is in London or Dublin, but it's going to be a full hour. It's one of those rare shows where I get a full hour. I've planned out about 6 stories, and the one with Banjolele will be in it. And
it's midnight in London.
It's midnight. Yes. So if you're having insomnia and want to listen to stories.
Was that my cue to come back?
Yeah, come on back.
sorry. Yeah, so Adam Booth's the website is Speak Story Series. speakstoryseries.com, and it's this coming Tuesday, which is the 8th at 5 p.m. Mountain Time. 5, 6, 7 o'clock Eastern Time.
Yes.
Right. 5, 4, 3 o'clock California time.
Oh, nice.
Is that right?
No.
All right, look it up. Look it up, people.
It's 5
Do
o'clock
not
my
take
time.
Simon's word for anything.
It'll be 4 o'clock. It'll be 4 o'clock LA time.
Okay.
Rachel Hedman, the name of the CD at this point is The Bee in the Bottle.
The Bee in the Bottle.
Which is cool.
So you have to tell that story at least.
I will. That one will be on the CD. Everything else is up in the air.
Well, that's what happened with my CD, because the one that I'm working on, it was going to be called. I can't even remember what it's going to be called now. But anyway, we did this. It was good, but Stone Soup's on the CD, right? And so it was going to be a kettle full of tales. And so Rob did this like amazing picture of this kettle in the forest, but it was so dark. I was like, this is a family CD, and I want it to really be attractive to families. So we changed the cover, and we had to change the title of the CD because there was no kettle on in the new image.
So we just had to do something fully different, like completely new.
Yeah, he was like, "Never mind, I'll use it some other time, Simon. Don't worry." Rob is so good. He's absolutely amazing.
He is. He does. That's why when I saw your CDs, I was very much going to poach that artist here.
There you go. So I was right with the midnight. There you go. Thank goodness for that. And Rachel. Funny that little mountain time girl. So Rob will save the image for another project, is what he said. So if another project comes in and he can use it, he'll sell it, or I might just buy it off him because he does such a good deal for me that I might use it for a single or something like that. I don't know. We'll figure it out. He's an amazing guy.
Mm-hmm.
Oh,
my bad.
Website says 7:30, not 7. Well, that's all right. People can get there early.
I mean, the thing that I think about with Zoom shows that are so fun are that you get to decide how it's going, how you enjoy it. So if you want to have popcorn and hot chocolate, you can have popcorn and hot chocolate. If you want a martini and a bowl full of cucumbers, you can have that too. Like,
yeah.
You can be on your couch, you can be laying in bed, you can be in the bath, keep your camera off, but
So I'm doing this workshop on Monday with Rachel, and I was taking some pictures of what could be a possible background. And there's a picture of me on the bed, like on all fours with one leg up at the back going, would this be a good background or not? I think probably not.
It's good for people to determine,
Yes.
that background.
Unless it's a Catherine Cookson novel. Maybe I was reading out loud. Maybe, I don't know. My mum used to call those bra busters.
That leaves a lot of questions about the bras at that time. We won't go into that for this.
No, we won't. Oh, dear. So what else are you up to? I mean, your life is really busy because you work at Sounds True as well, which does a whole bunch of meditation, and I don't want to use the word new age or the phrase new age.
It's very 90s.
It is very 90s.
Not 90s, it's spiritualism
it's
now.
Very, very 80s actually, but whatever.
Oh, okay. So I do. I work at the publishing company Sounds True, and they're a fantastic company to work for. They've been really supportive throughout this whole strange time of making sure they transferred everybody working from home middle of March. They made it available. They said anybody who wants to do this at the beginning of March, we're just like anybody who feels unsafe and wants to work from home. And then by the middle of it, it was just mandatory for everybody to be out. And they went month by month saying, we're not going to come back into the office. We're not going to come back into the office. And then finally we're just like, we're not going to come back into the office, and we'll reassess this in 2021.
Yeah, it's probably not a bad idea. So have you found yourself getting more into that spiritual side or that healing side that they do? Because they do a lot of yoga stuff. It's not just transcendental meditation. There's a whole bunch of other sort of healing work that they do. Have you found yourself getting into that at all?
Some of them. I love being an employee. You get great book discounts. And so they've got
as long as you're not spending a whole paycheck, just I'm going to sign this, here you go, into the bookstore.
So there's some books that I get into, and there's There's some on healing, of like emotional healing. There's some on raising mindful children. There's children's books. There's one called I Am a Warrior Goddess, which I gave to my niece, who is the most amazing baby in the world. I had to put that in there somewhere. I gave one to my niece called I Am a Warrior Goddess, but the way I read it to her and the way her parents read it to her is I am a warrior goddess. You know, the warrior goddess cleans up the trash. You know, you just really get to play with this book. What I am trying to convince them to do is, I think that there are a number of stories and fairy tales and folk tales that would very much lend to their mindful, kind, spiritual brand.
Well, Elisa Permain, she does work along those lines. I mean, she does a lot of healing through folk and fairy tales, and she's got a couple of books out.
Yeah.
So maybe you could hook her up.
I know. I'd like to see more storytelling in just about every publishing company in the world.
Yeah, right. I know. That would be so good.
My main job, though, is working with. They've got a program by Jack Kornfield and Tara Brach, two well-known mindfulness and meditation teachers, and they do a 2-year teacher training program. And I get to work with all the students. So
that's cool.
They're very mindful and super sweet. And then sometimes you're like, have you been listening to this course at all?
Oh, really?
But, what it's been interesting is connecting with people over this time and how different people are dealing with this. And also the meditations they're bringing to their community to help work through. I think everybody is going to have some level of trauma, and that's not necessarily the word of that you're unable to move or speak, but it's things that affect us. It makes us all short and with each other and nervous, and we're a bit frayed. Like our edges are a bit frayed, and it's helpful to have teachers and supporters out there who can just say, we're going to sit as a group, we're going to take a deep breath, we're not in any danger right now, and we can we can at least have 10 minutes of remembering that everything's okay right now. And then we can go back to panicking and reading the news. But
I was like that in the shower this morning, actually. I was like getting all worked up in the shower. I was like, why am I doing this to myself? Stop. So I'm like, all right, get all the water rushing down my body. Wash it all off. Let it
all go.
Right.
And
stop being stupid. It doesn't matter. None of this.
And then I let, it's good to know what's happening in the world.
It does. Well, it's important. I think, we need to be informed, and we need to, I'm finding that I didn't want to get into this, but we really do need to be very mindful of what we read, no matter what side of the fence you're on, and to actually do a lot of research into what everything means these days. Because I think that everything has got a spin on it. Absolutely everything. I'm watching the news and I'm thinking, well, what is that? Okay, let me do some research on this. And I'm digging in. I'm like, well, they're only telling part of the story here, and that's not good for anybody, And it just makes the fighting between the two factions even worse. But anyway,
it does. It makes it tense. And what I've realized is, there's so much that can come through these screens, but we're the guard. We're the ones who stand at the gate. And if we let it into the house through our words and through like getting all flustered and annoyed at it, and even if you're on the same page with the people that you're talking to, it still is bringing this sense of tension. And so being more discerning for me about when it's time to be like, did you see that comment someone said? Or just say, you know what? I'm not going to worry about that right now, because the tomato plants just bore their first fruit, and now we can have BLTs, and that is what I'm going to focus on.
I think that's a really good thing to focus on. Absolutely. So what's your favorite food? What have you been eating? Or shouldn't I ask that? During this COVID, what's your go-to food during the COVID season?
There's been a lot of popcorn.
Oh, yeah?
I did kind of devour a lot of chocolate and peanut butter recently in the form of Reese's peanut butter cups. I also started using my upstairs neighbor's treadmill.
Oh, you have?
Because we went
so Ken is sitting down there while he hears dunk, 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 dunk.
No, it's been that I've realized we went on a hike a weekend and my hips started to hurt. And I was kind of shocked, and I realized that I do get up and I walk around the garden a couple times a day, but that's maybe 300 steps. And I've been only walking 300 steps for the last 6 months. So I'm hitting the treadmill 5 days a week because I'd like my hips to be in good health when it's time to start walking any sort of distance at this point.
Yeah, I found that, I've had to start, the kids, well, before Aiden went back to college, Aiden did a lot of walking the dog, and Sarah's done some, and Perry's done some, and her friends together. But yeah, it's like those times that I have gone out, I'm being like, I got to do this more often. Because the place that I go up to it's a switchback. So it's like super steep first. And it's like, I get to the top and it's like, if I take a photograph and I have to bend down, I'm going to pass out when I stand back up again. It's not quite that bad, but.
No, it's important to take care of ourselves, and so I do love food. I mean, I kind of have been cooking a lot of what's in the garden. I made zucchini lasagna the first time this week. Oh my gosh!
Do you know what's really good with zucchini?
What?
Zucchini fritters.
Ooh!
Like little zucchini patties. And it tastes a lot like crab cakes, actually.
Like egg and crumbs.
Yes. Yeah.
And
I'll send you the recipe.
Lots of oil. Yeah.
Yes, probably. Yes, and 4 gallons of oil. It's great for the complexion.
Good food, lots of sleep, getting some exercise in. It's all those things your doctor tells you to do. Like,
you're actually doing them. You're one of the few people on the planet that.
I've even started flossing regularly. I'm so adulting.
You're all grown up.
I know.
All right. Well, I think we should probably knock it on the head. It's been absolutely wonderful to spend an hour just chit-chatting with you. I hope everybody else has agreed that they've had some fun. Thanks for joining us. Thanks for staying with us, those of you that did. Thanks for popping in and out, those that did. You can always catch the repeat that will go onto Facebook on the Simon Brooks Storyteller Facebook page. It's also on my YouTube page, which is Diamond Scree. So that's youtube.com/user/Diamond Scree. So you can find it there as well if you don't want to share this with people that you don't want on Facebook. Or if you're like me and just like hate Facebook and just use it as, a tool for work. I'm glad, Isabel, that you liked it. We did the show just for you today. That was dedicated to you. Thanks, Liz, for being here. I really appreciate that. The thing's starting to jump up. It was wonderful to have everybody here. Thank you, Tom and Karen. Love you both. Hope you're staying well and staying away from trouble and sickness and all that kind of stuff. And I have another guest next week.
Oh, who's your next guest?
I can't remember. Let me have a look at the calendar real quick. I'm rubbish at this.
Calendar. I'll say.
Who is it? Hang on. So keep talking, Ray.
So I'm going to say thank you for everybody for coming and listening. And it's so much fun to kind of just sit and chat about storytelling and what I've been doing. And now you know all the secrets.
Yes.
So do what you would with them.
Yes, do it. Do what? Yes. Remember, no accents ever again. All right. Unless it's your own. Okay. Or it's one you grew up with. All right. So sorry, Liz. I promise to behave again.
He's not going to behave, Liz. You know that. All right. Who's next?
So next week is Robert Rivest, and he is a mime artist, and he tells story through mime, and he's also a laughter yoga coach. And Robert I've seen him at many showcases, and we've been able to hang out once or twice a little bit at these said showcases. And he is a phenomenal human being. Actually, there was something he posted on Facebook. I know I hate Facebook, but he posted this thing on Facebook. There are certain people and things that I follow, and I actually printed it out, and I can read it so that if I'm having a really bad day, which does happen, I might be all smiles on the public, but there are good days and bad days. And so, if I'm having a really bad day, that's one of the things that turns me around. And that's, it's, he's a really good guy. So if you want to, it's going to be a lot of laughter. We are going to start by laughing. and getting everybody else to laugh. So tune in next Friday. I think it's at 1:00. You'll know soon or later. And Rachel, yes, we are both into steampunk. Yes.
So
You know, if you got to be into something, it's got to be chocolate and steampunk, right? The healthy alternative.
Dark chocolate, good steampunk.
Yeah. See you, everybody. Bye.